Welcome to the CIECAst. This is Fred Iantorno, Executive Director of CIECA. Today's presentation is entitled Insights into Photo Estimates. In case you might not know, in 2018, CIECA has initiated a new Standards Development Committee on photo estimating. The committee currently meets on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you wish to participate, please email Charlie Quirt or myself. Today's speaker is Leslie Redfield. Leslie is the AVP of Client Services at OnSource. She joined them in February of 2017. Prior to that, she was in the insurance industry for 26 years, spending 18 of those years with Progressive Insurance, where she held several leadership roles. Those included Claims Audit Manager and Corporate Director of Auto-Physical Implementation. In that role, she was responsible for implementing all physical damage process improvements company-wide, including their claims service centers. Leslie's most recent position in the insurance industry prior to joining OnSource was Director of Audit and Auto Physical Damage at Safe Auto. While there, she implemented the company's photo estimating process. Without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Leslie. Thank you, Leslie.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate the time, and thank you everyone who's listening to this presentation about photo estimating. As Fred said, I work for OnSource. We are a leading provider of photo estimating tools to the insurance industry, and we, every month we do about 45,000 assignments. But before I joined OnSource, I led an auto physical damage department where we actually implemented this process back in 2013. Believe me, I was skeptical that customers would be able to provide our appraisers with photos that would clearly depict the damage to their vehicle well enough for the appraisers to write an accurate estimate. But much to my surprise, the photos were excellent, and the supplement rate for this method of inspection was lower than other methods. Of course, the vehicles that qualified for this process were low severity losses, and some of those vehicles weren't even being repaired at the customer's option. So photo estimating, if it's implemented appropriately, can be a very beneficial tool to both the insurance company and their policyholders. Today, I'm going to talk about how the digital process in general is impacting the insurance industry. Why are we seeing this emerge in the industry? The benefits of the photo estimating process, the steps you need to take when implementing this process, and finally, where this process is going to take us in the future. So let's start with a broad view of how digital technologies are utilized in the insurance industry overall. I think it's safe to say that digital technologies are infiltrating every step in the insurance value chain. More and more companies are developing their own apps that allow the policyholder to manage their policies, report claims, and in some instances, track their driving habits through telematics. In fact, there are some companies out there that communicate with their customers almost solely through digital technologies. Insurance companies are moving to digital tech to improve their underwriting practices, bolster customer service, and increase efficiency within claims. In today's age, it's not only possible, but in many instances preferable to the customer to never or rarely have to speak with someone at their insurance company. And I know that's scary for some folks, but it's the world we live in today. So some of the technologies being adopted include, but certainly aren't limited to, self-service applications, real-time virtual inspections, drones, and chatbots. While some may be concerned that all this is going to do is eliminate jobs, in fact, people are still going to be required to address the most complex issues. So what that really means is that employees will need to be more highly trained, and it's going to ultimately reduce redundant or mundane tasks. Next slide. Could you do the next slide, Brett? Thank you. So why do we find ourselves in this position in the first place? It's all about smartphones and their ability for people to walk around with what is essentially a computer in their pocket. As you can see from this chart, in just the last 8 years, smartphone adoption rates in the U.S. have skyrocketed from around 20% in 2010 to almost 70% in 2018. And while we're anticipating slower growth over the next few years, it's safe to say that the overwhelming majority of customers that we interact with every day own a smartphone, and they aren't using it to make phone calls. Next. As you can see from this slide, making phone calls doesn't even make the top 10 list for how smartphone owners use these devices. I was really surprised when I found that out. Making phone calls actually came in at number 11. So we've moved into a world where the majority of our daily communication with our fellow humans is through text, email, or social media. I can honestly say that in the past week, I've used my smartphone for all of these functions listed here more than making phone calls. In fact, but for calls that I've made for work, I make very few personal phone calls. But I couldn't even count the number of texts and emails I've sent or received. And while I don't personally document my life with photos, I know a lot of people who do. I guess that's why using your phone as a camera comes in at number 4. So now let's talk a little bit about who is driving this change. Next. So I guess you probably guessed it, it's millennials. In 2016, millennials became the largest generation in the labor force. With this strength in numbers, there are bound to be changes. Millennials think about things and tackle problems in a different manner than we've done in the past. And I think the best way to understand why that is to look at how millennials grew up. Next slide. So who exactly are millennials? I'm sure if you aren't one yourself, you either work closely with them, they are your children, your doctor, or even your insurance adjuster. So the millennial generation includes anyone born between 1980 and the year 2000. They are the largest generation this planet has ever seen. There are about 80 million millennials in the US and 2.5 billion worldwide. This generation grew up next to technology, unlike myself. And with the emergence of social media, they are more connected to the world than any other generation ever could have been. By 2030, we can expect the workforce to be mainly sourced by millennials. These young men and women aspire to make a difference with the work they do every day. They are confident, they have high expectations, and are oriented toward achievement. So to truly understand millennials, I think we need to look at and understand what they think is important. Next slide. So from a commodity perspective, the number one everyday item that is most important to millennials is their smartphone. This is followed closely by their toothbrush and deodorant, thank God. I'm not really sure why coffee's so low, but it probably has something to do with Red Bull coming on the scene. And while still higher than TV and social media, they rank the importance of their vehicle fairly low in their priorities. Next slide. So I guess the question is, have smartphones become an obsession? Recent studies show that the average millennial checks their phone 150 times per day. In fact, many of them sleep with their phones and even look at it at night. So personally, I keep my phone in the other room unless I'm using it as an alarm clock. Another interesting nugget of information is that 52% of millennials think technology has helped their relationships. This is in stark contrast to the 57% of baby boomers who feel that it has ruined relationships. Now, while we all know that screen time, whether it be on a computer, a phone, or TV, can have some effect on an individual, it doesn't stop the 25% of millennials who claim to spend more than 5 hours per day on their phone. Much of this is likely due to the fact that they've replaced their laptops and tablets with their smartphones. It provides the same or similar functionality, it's just a smaller screen. So why did I spend all this time talking about millennials and their smartphones? Well, as I said, there's an awful lot of them out there, and they're forcing us to do things differently. Next slide. So let's take a look at how smartphone apps are impacting claims. First, there are customer self-serve claim apps. These apps allow the customer to take HD quality photos and videos of their damaged vehicle so the carrier can complete the estimate. Many apps also provide functionality to receive the estimate once completed, select a shop, and even receive instant payments. Self-serve apps have some fraud control functionality built in, which is very important to most carriers. This includes the inability to use pictures that are already on your phone. So you can't use an old picture and say, hey, this is the damage to my vehicle. It gives you the ability to identify the time the photo was taken, as well as the location. Many also have other functionality that detects blurry photos to help ensure the photos are of high quality. Some customers don't want to download an app, so there's a solution for that as well. Most photo app providers also provide an HTML version of their app, and these HTML versions don't provide all of the functionality of these native apps, but they are a good option for many customers. There are also applications available that allow for real-time communication, whether it be between the adjuster and the customer, or the adjuster and a body shop. So in the case of a shop, if during repairs they identify the need for a supplement, instead of taking that vehicle out of production, they can instantly connect with the insurance company and share photos and videos in real time. This eliminates the need for an adjuster to come to the shop to complete the supplement, as it can happen almost instantaneously. So you can imagine the cycle time savings that you can have there. There are also apps many companies are using so that their field staff out in the field can provide a standardized set of photos every time, as well as apps for agents who want to remain part of the claims process for their customers. Next. So what kind of benefits can a company expect if they implement a photo estimating process? By providing customers with more convenient choices for getting their estimate completed, you will often see higher NPS scores. Now, it's important to note here that you won't see these if you force customers into using this option. It has to be something they are comfortable doing. Most companies have also experienced reduced LAE after implementing a photo estimating process. If you have field staff writing somewhere between, let's say, 3 and 6 estimates per day, and you increase that to 10 to 13 per day, the benefit is immediate. You can also reduce the cost per estimate by reducing IA usage on lower severity claims. If you are using a high percentage of IAs to write estimates, you will likely see improved estimate accuracy if those estimates are now being written by your own staff. Now, I'm not trying to disparage IAs in any way by saying this. It's just that we have better controls in place for our staff than IAs in most instances. Cycle time can also be improved drastically. Often the customer can receive their completed estimate within hours of submitting their claim. And one last benefit I'd like to point out is that apps can allow agents to remain relevant with their customers during the claim process if they choose to do so. Next. So I want to talk about, implementing a process. It's a fairly simple process to implement, but there's 3 key steps that I think everybody needs to take when implementing this process. Number 1, you need to set the organization up for success, and you do that by embracing the change. You have to set up a dedicated internal team to write these estimates, or you have to choose an IA partner to do those for you. You also have to do training with these estimators. As you can imagine, writing an estimate from photos is a little different than standing in front of the vehicle. However, these photos are HD quality, and differences aren't as stark as you might imagine. The HD quality video that can also be provided is very helpful for appraisers when it comes to the actual identification of and extent of damage. It's also important that you train the adjusters and/or F&OL on when it's appropriate to offer this service to a customer. Next slide. Next, ensuring you qualify the customer and the claim is key. You have to know the right questions to ask the customer either at F&OL or during first contact with the customer. The answers those customers give you will determine if photo estimating is the best option for the customer. For most companies, strict guidelines are developed to qualify these vehicles. This process is best used for safely drivable vehicles with low severity damage. If you opt to use it further, you could run into some issues with a higher supplement rate, not identifying the damage that's necessary to complete an accurate estimate. Once qualified, you have to clearly explain the process to the customer and set up expectations up front. Failing to do so is simply going to delay the claim. Next slide. The final step is to ensure you have proper support in place to assist customers during this process in the event the customer encounters issues. You absolutely need customer support. Some app vendors supply the support on your behalf and some don't. If they don't, the insurance company will have to ensure they have the support function in place prior to implementation. Now, let me give you a couple of ideas about what that support infrastructure looks like. Next one. So you're going to need to think about tech support. Most customers go through this process with no need for support at all, but there are times when they have questions or issues that may need to be addressed, and you want them addressed quickly. One of the most common questions we receive is, what is my iTunes or Play Store password? I found that funny, but anyways, you have to have people available who can walk a customer through obtaining that information. Next is quality assurance. While most apps do a great job walking the customer through the pictures that need to be taken, customers aren't always perfect, and having a team to review these photos and reach out to the customer if there is an issue before those photos get to the appraiser can save you a lot of time. We do this at OnSource, and we see at approximately 7% rate of pictures that fail QA, where we have to reach out to the customer. So following up with customers after they receive the app is also key to ensure you're getting a high rate of return. Sometimes customers need a gentle reminder to complete the self-inspection. You can expect about 50% of your customers to use the app on day 1, and it's a good idea to follow up with the remaining customers after that. It can be in the form of text, email, phone call, or some combination of those. Receiving feedback from your customers about the process can also be invaluable. So you need to make sure that you have a mechanism to capture their feedback, whether that be through the app or through your own customer survey. You may need to add an additional question about app usage in your survey. Next slide. After implementation of your photo estimating program, you're definitely going to want to have a robust audit program in place, and this program should have a few key features. You're going to want to audit files and determine the root cause of claims that started in this channel but weren't completed. In order to do this, you're likely going to have to review both files and phone calls to get the full picture. Are your adjusters explaining the process appropriately? Are they qualifying the vehicles appropriately? So it's also extremely important that you review estimate accuracy. This should be an ongoing practice and one that most companies already have in place. So continuous monitoring of customer feedback is obviously also very important. And if possible, you're going to want to break down your NPS scores by method of inspection. And finally, if your company opts to have their own support function, monitor their availability, call wait times, and ability to address the issues. So you can see it's actually a fairly simple process to implement. You just have to review the process the same way you would review any other process that you've rolled out to your organization. So what's coming next? Next slide. Many of you, like myself, remember lugging around a set of crash guides so you could write estimates. My trunk was full of them. It took a long time and a lot of calculating to write an accurate estimate. Then we moved on to computerized crash guides. I didn't like them at first, but I soon came to love the fact that I no longer needed to calculate overlap or clear coat. Pretty soon, and in fact it's already happening, you're going to be able to have a line-by-line estimate written through computer vision. Simply take photos and the computer is going to do the rest. These early versions of this process, they're not going to be perfect, and trained appraisers are still going to be needed to ensure their accuracy, but they are coming. I guess the question is, are you going to embrace this technology? So that brings me to the conclusion of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the photo estimating process. I appreciate the time given to me to present this material. And as I said, when I first started down the road of implementing a photo estimating program in 2013, I was skeptical, but the results we saw were undeniable. The technology continues to improve, and let's face it, the millennials aren't going anywhere. They're here to stay, and they demand these options when dealing with their insurer. Fred, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Leslie. Thank you for that great presentation. Thank you, audience, for joining us today, and hopefully you'll be able to join us for future CIECAcast. But before you go, let me tell you about the annual CIECA Symposium. Will be held on September 17th through the 19th in Tampa, Florida. Please consider joining us for that. Please visit www.ciecasymposium.com. There will be 12 business and general tracks and 4 technical tracks. Thank you for keeping abreast of CIECA's developments. Our standards are built by volunteers from all industry segments. For those that have contributed to our standards, we thank you. And if you want to become involved and would like to participate, please contact Charlie Quirt or myself. As always, this video will be available on the CIECA website within 48 hours. Again, thank you, Leslie, and thank you, our audience, for participating. Have a great day and a great Memorial Day weekend. Bye now.